Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Money9. I'm Kartik Malhotra. Well, the coronavirus cases are rising on a daily basis, and the second wave in India across the country is clearly visible now. Well, at the same time, we are also receiving good news on the vaccination front, with crores of people getting vaccinated. And of course, now around the corner is just a few days away from those above 45 years also likely to start their vaccination process. At the same time, there's disturbing news also coming in about these multiple new double mutants which are entering the Indian coronavirus scene. Not pretty at all. Are our vaccines ever going to be effective against those? I'm sure our viewers have got multiple questions around the efficacy of our vaccines in light of the new variants coming in. And to answer those questions, I've got with me Dr. Samiran Panda of ICMR. Dr. Panda, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on Money9.
Good afternoon.
Help us understand, first of all, sir, what is this double mutant that we are hearing about?
Well, that's a question of national interest, I guess, because on every media there is a talk about the double mutant. So double mutant is not only talk of any particular town, but of the country, I believe. So before we go to the issue of double mutant, it is a good idea to try understand what is a mutant. So when a virus infects a human being or an animal, or a plant, because viruses are capable of infecting animals or humans and plants, they do proliferate. They do need a living cell for proliferation because they do not have their own kitchen, if you like it. So they require the mechanism which is there in the cells for proliferation. And at the time of proliferation or increasing in numbers, there are certain errors that take place. And these errors are not necessarily damaging to the virus itself, but there is a bit of a change in the genome sequence. What do we mean by the genome sequence? So it's an array of amino acids. So if one amino acid is replaced by another one, we call it mutant, because the new progeny of the virus is not having the exact amino acid sequence, which the parent virus had. So that's one type of mutation. These smaller changes are called drifts.
Right.
However, there could be another mutation or mutant where a large section of the genome gets deleted. So those larger changes are called shifts. When there are major changes, the new mutants of the viruses can, sweep over the world and cause a pandemic. That happened in 1918 by the influenza virus. So as we understand, the mutations are of different types. The viruses do change at the time of proliferation. And some of these changes can also be influenced by the immunity that we have. Because body is trying to, when the virus infects us, our body tries to fight it out. So under that immunological pressure, also there is a change. Now, these mutations are mapped or monitored on a regular basis. So we now know SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes COVID-19, that goes through this process of mutation, which is normal, which is expected. So the moment we hear about mutant or mutation in a virus, we need not to be panicked at all. However, when we see that the mapped mutations or the known changes are happening, two of them in one virus, we call them double mutant. So one particular virus just did not show one known mutation, but two known mutations, two known changes are happening in the same virion, then we call them double mutant. The question that you asked, Kartik, is how relevant is it for us?
And how worried should we be? I think it might be relevant, of course, in the science community, but as somebody living in the country, living in the world, do I need to be worried about it?
That's a very good question. I would say that for you and me, as a common human being, if we get infected by the mutant, how are you going to get infected with it? So the virus, the new mutant, or be it the old circulating strain, the virus has not changed its strategy for transmission. So it's still using the same mode of transmission for getting, transmitted from one infected person to another susceptible individual. So I would say that if we are really concerned about SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19, we should all be interested in knowing how do we protect ourselves. And the protective measures for the new mutants are still the same as it held true for the older circulating strains, because
Right.
the virus has not changed its strategy for transmission. So we should not change the time tested, proven prevention strategies as well. So the mutants now need to be studied, and they are being studied. There is watchful vigilance in order to figure out that are they going to be more virulent, but not necessarily all the mutants turn out to be deadlier or more virulent. So they might be weaker also. And
Okay.
if a virus has to be a smart virus or has to act as a smart virus, it requires us to remain alive because they are dependent on us. So try see what I'm saying, that if a mutant is more transmissible, meaning it is going from one individual to another, that is good for the virus because it is getting more and more cells for proliferation. But in the process, if it kills us, then it's not a smart virus, because a dead man doesn't sneeze, a dead man doesn't talk, a dead man doesn't cough. So the SARS-CoV-2 requires a person, an infected individual, to talk, to sneeze, or to cough, so that the infected water droplets or the aerosols go and infect another susceptible individual. So the point I'm trying to make is that mutations do happen. They're expected phenomena. It's quite normal to see, the mutations happening. However, all the mutants are not necessarily deadlier. Some of them are more transmission efficient, but the transmission efficient ones are again not necessarily more virulent. So, yes, we should keep a track of what is happening, but so long the new mutant or the older ones, they are using the same strategy for transmission, we should actually follow or adhere to the time tested and prevention measures. So, for common mass, yes, for the scientists, that's a matter of interest in the laboratory that gets tested. But so for the common man of the street is concerned, we need to be much more aware about how do we protect ourselves or prevent ourselves from getting infected.
Right, Dr. Panda. Dr. Panda, you mentioned the virus is not changing its transmission strategy, but do we need to change our vaccination strategy, or are vaccines going to be as effective against this double mutant variant as it is against the regular coronavirus that we know of?
That's a very good and smart question, Kartik. I would say the good news here is the Covaxin we have in India, and we have another one, Covishield. Both
Yeah.
are intramuscular injection, and the two doses are given with a gap of 4 weeks in between. From Indian Council of Medical Research, we have tested this. Those individuals who received Covaxin, sera was collected from them. Actually, blood was collected, then the sera was separated. So those sera were found to be effective against the UK variant of SARS-CoV-2. So that's a good news. So the vaccines induce immunity, and what happens in the body once you get the vaccine, if you complete the two doses, after 2 or 3 weeks of the second dose of the vaccine, the antibodies get developed in sufficient concentration, and there are cell-mediated, arms of the immunity as well. So once we get immune, are we immune against only that virus
Right.
strain which was used for developing the vaccine, or the vaccine is going to be effective on a larger, variants or strains? We have reasons to believe that, particularly the Covaxin, which used the whole virion killed platform-based vaccine, it would remain effective against a couple of variants. So, but some of the new variants might have an escape phenomena, so they won't be impacted upon. But honestly speaking, the vaccines that have been developed against SARS-CoV-2, they do not prevent acquisition of infection. What do they
Right.
do? They actually prevent us, after getting the infection, to move to the advanced stage of the disease or severe symptomatic disease, or even to a stage when I would require a hospitalization, or I might even, land up in fatality. So that's the effect we look forward to for the vaccines to do. So what I'm trying to say that if we, your question was, do we need to change our strategy for vaccination? I would say only one thing probably we could change, that we should change, is to ramp up the vaccination, plan or rollout. So the uptake needs to go up, high, and so vaccine hesitancy need to go away. And we should all join hands. We should encourage people to come forward and get the vaccines against COVID-19. Because the moment larger proportion of people in the community receive the vaccine, then there is a barrier against the effect of the virus
Right.
for inducing fatality or complicated disease or severe form of the disease. So what
Right.
I'm saying that innovative behavior change communication strategy is one, because behavior change is the thing which would prevent the transmission of the virus. And on the other hand, the vaccination, that needs to really go high. The
Right.
current rate of vaccination in India is 3 to 3.5 million per day. So if it doubles up, that will really be a good achievement. So we need to do two things. You ask specifically what should be our strategy. Our strategy should be how do we adhere to the COVID appropriate behavior, and how innovative communication, behavior change communication strategy could help people to do that. And the second strategy should be how to address the vaccine hesitancy so that the vaccination uptake in the community goes up. Those are the two major strategy,
Right. So
I
I
would
think
say.
vaccine hesitancy is something that we had seen in the senior citizens in that age group of people above 60. But there are people, in fact, we've got audience questions coming in on this live broadcast right now. And Arun wants to know that should the population, those between 15 to 30, be vaccinated on priority as they venture out more? And hence that age group is a little more vulnerable to catch the infection.
Oh, okay. So this is a very good question. So we are talking about 15 to 30, so that's younger age group. And yes, they venture out, so there is a possibility of them getting infection. But here, as I said, what does the vaccine do? The vaccine does not prevent us from getting infection. But once we get infected, and if I'm already vaccinated, then I will not land up in the complicated or severe form of the disease. And I would also be able to avert a death. From that perspective, the priority group is elderly people. Priority group is those or is constituted by the individuals who have comorbidities, because the chance of them getting infected is associated with landing up with complications or severe form of the disease. So the younger people, they might get infected. However, most of them do not land up in the severe form of the disease, nor they require hospitalization. Mostly, that's the natural history of the disease. So I would say that yes, the younger people do run the risk of acquiring infection, and they should observe COVID appropriate behavior so that they do not get infected. However, the vaccination needs to be prioritized for those who are elderly, or those who have comorbidities, or the healthcare professionals and the frontline workers who have more chance of getting infected and landing up in complications due to repeated infections. So prioritization, as it is going in India, is fine.
Right. So we also have one more audience question coming in, and this is from Shubham Shukla. And Shubham wants to know, he's written this in Hindi, कि अगर किसी ने दोनों डोज ले लिए हैं वैक्सीनेशन के, तो क्या चांसेस कम हैं कि उनको ये डबल म्यूटेंट कुछ नुकसान पहुंचा पाएगा? So again, I think to go back to the answer that you were giving earlier, we have a case in point where Covaxin seems to be a better bet against these mutations. Does that answer Shubham's question?
ये बात सही है. I can talk in English and Hindi,
Sure,
but
sure.
maybe English. Yeah.
No problem.
So
Please continue in English.
we really we really don't know whether the double mutant is going to be more damaging to us. That needs to be studied. But yes, Covaxin has a better chance, and it has been shown to be effective against the UK variant and also the Brazilian variant. And yes, the double mutants might infect, but the number of double mutants infecting people in India is very, very small, that number. So
Right.
I would say that don't worry, the mutants are happening, but let's go ahead and get our vaccination. 2 डोज लगाने के बाद जो इम्यूनिटी लड़ने का जो क्षमता हमारा पास आ जाएगा, उसी से हम कमियां बनाएंगे. लेकिन one individual getting vaccinated will make a change. It has to be 70% of the community who need to get the 2 doses of the vaccine. And while we are getting our vaccines, 2 डोज लगाने का अंतर जो समय रहते हैं उसी समय हमें मास्क इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए, because in between two doses there is a possibility that we will acquire the infection. That's called breakthrough infection. And also the immunity kicks in after 2 to 3 weeks of completion of the vaccination schedule. So I would say that while we are getting ourselves vaccinated, we should at the same time concurrently maintain the COVID appropriate behavior.
Right. And the COVID appropriate behavior, unfortunately, in this country, Dr. Panda, I'm not sure if you'll agree with me, is fairly absent, with hardly anybody adhering to either social distancing or wearing masks. So, having said that, Dr. Panda, scientifically speaking, again, coming back to the strategy, what would be the best strategy? Stay at home, stay locked down and get vaccinated, or go out, build herd immunity, and of course, maintain COVID appropriate behavior? What should be the strategy right now? Lockdown, no lockdown?
Kartik, you hit the nail right on the head. I would say that, look, I mean, we have lived with this virus for a little more than a year or so. So I would say any behavior change is challenging. When there is a threat in front of us, we do change. However, it remains very difficult. It becomes difficult to stick to the changed behavior. So we need to sort of see the risk which is there if we do not observe COVID appropriate behavior vis-a-vis the benefit that we achieve or acquire by observing such protective behaviors. I would say that lockdown cannot be a long-term answer. Yes, it was necessary during the first wave of the epidemic. And again, now we are seeing the second surge in some of the districts. So there again, the lockdown might be required, might be necessary. However, that cannot be a long-term solution. So I would say that behavior change is the issue. We need to go out, we need to slowly open up in terms of business, education, and our social interactions. So I would say that it would be necessary for us to win this match against the virus, and in order for us to be able to do so, it is very important to have community engagement, where community will come forward and will come up with the solutions for innovative behavior change.
Right. So, having seen science very closely and also the Indian behavior very closely, Dr. Panda, how do you think that's going to happen with Holi around the corner, with political rallies all across the country? You're suggesting COVID appropriate behavior, and we are seeing a complete absence of that. So, what is your forecast over the next few days, maybe a week or so? What kind of a surge are you expecting?
Okay, you talked about Holi. I would say let us make a choice. Holi for this year and then land up in hospitals, or maybe Holi for the next coming years. And this year we might have a different kind of Holi in terms of cultural interactions and a bit of a restricted movement. So Holi this year, or no Holi this year, but we win over this, war against SARS-CoV-2, and Holi, much more colorful and enjoyable Holi for the years to come. Because we won't probably appreciate or enjoy our Holi if for us, the near and dear ones and the elderly in the family get infected and they land up in severe form of disease, or if they get admitted. So we cannot just leave for our own joy. We have to be acting like responsible family members and responsible citizens. So I would say that no Holi or restricted observation of Holi this year, so that we can have much vigorous, colorful, and enjoyable Holi in the years to come.
Right, Dr. Panda. I saw that you clearly avoided answering the question on the political rally, so I'll not push you on that. But
no. I have repeatedly. I won't avoid that. So mass gatherings is the fourth pillar. So one is hand hygiene. The second is usage of mask. The third is maintaining physical distance during social interaction. And the fourth, very important prevention tool is avoiding mass gathering. And we are seeing mass gatherings in relation to the political campaign, election campaign. The second is in terms of the religious events. And the third is about social events like marriage ceremony or Holi. Holi is also a religious event. So any mass gathering should be avoided because that works. Some of them work as the super spreading event. So the politicians actually during the election campaign give this message out, and people should try understand that we are exposing ourselves to the risk. So voting a leader would also probably require considering or thinking or observing whether that leader is, spreading message with regard to the COVID appropriate behavior.
Right. Doctor, also before I let you go, help us understand Sputnik 5, likelihood of its efficacy, already having shown good results and likelihood of it coming to India. How satisfied are you with the reports that you have seen on Sputnik 5?
Okay, this is again one question which is of national interest, I guess. Everybody is discussing 75% efficacy versus 81% efficacy versus 90% efficacy, Pfizer, Moderna, Sputnik, Covishield, Covaxin. Let me tell you that all these efficacy figures relate to the population, not for the individual. So what I would say, don't wait for any particular vaccine to arrive so that you make a decision to take a vaccine. If your number or the time or the call has come, please go ahead and take a vaccine, because each of the vaccines which are allowed to be used in the program, they go through preclinical studies and phase 1 clinical trial, which is about safety, phase 2 clinical trial, which is about immunogenicity, and phase 3 clinical trial, which is about efficacy. So all the vaccines which will be made available in the program, each one of them will have to go through or pass through these phases of the clinical trial. And so be it Sputnik, Covaxin, Covishield, don't choose between any one of them, because the efficacy figure that we come to know about or that we discuss is at the population level. For an individual, it does what it does. So the vaccines protect us following infection to land up in severe form of the disease or to get hospitalized or even in unfortunate events of death. Vaccines help us to avoid them. So go ahead, get yourself vaccinated. The time is now.
Right. And now with the vaccine drive opening up for people above 45 years, doctor, do we have enough supplies? Is there any concern around the fact that we may have a larger population than the number of vaccines available to vaccinate?
The discussions are on, and we are not a vaccine deficient country. And India is different from other countries in the sense that we have not only think of ourselves and the vaccination drive within India, but also about other countries. So we have supplied vaccines to others. So we never took the vaccine nationalism route, which makes us very different, because we do believe that the whole world is one family. So it's essential for us, particularly when it comes to the question of health and disease. The infections don't respect borders. Neither do they require passport to go from one country to another. So we have believed in not only caring for ourselves, but also caring for others. So I would say that right now, India is not a vaccine deficient country at all in terms of supply. So no worry, no panic, but we should all as Indians move ahead and get our vaccines against COVID-19.
Right. So 3 messages coming there from Dr. Panda very, very clearly. Number 1, follow COVID appropriate behavior. Number 2, avoid large gatherings. And number 3, go ahead and get vaccinated when your turn does come. Dr. Panda, thank you so much for joining us on Money News.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on Money9 News. News and updates continue. And of course, Sakshi is coming in with the last take in just a few minutes. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.